A fiery clash on Jimmy Kimmel Live last night left viewers stunned as host Jimmy Kimmel and Repro's Jasmine Crockett traded brutal insults in a viral showdown that spiraled into chaos, ending with Crockett's dramatic exit. The lights of the Hollywood studio blazed down on the sleek stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live, where the audience's anticipation crackled like static electricity. Last night, April 25, 2025, the air was thick with tension from the moment rapper Jasmine Crockett, the sharp-tongued Texas congresswoman, strode onto the set. Known for her unapologetic style and viral clapbacks, Crockett was there to discuss the latest political firestorms. But what unfolded was a confrontation that no one saw coming. Kimmel, usually the master of steering conversations with humor, seemed off his game, his grin tighter than usual as he greeted Crockett. The crowd, sensing the undercurrent, leaned forward in their seats. Kimmel kicked things off with a seemingly light jab, referencing Crockett's recent social media post calling a prominent political figure a buffoon. "So, Jasmine, you're out here throwing shade online," he said, his tone playful but with a sting. "Is that how you get things done in Congress, or is that just for the likes?" The audience chuckled, but Crockett's smile was razor-thin. She leaned forward, her voice steady but laced with defiance. "Jimmy, I call it like I see it. If that's shade, then some folks are standing in a whole forest of it." The crowd erupted, but Kimmel's eyes narrowed, a flicker of irritations crossing his face. The conversation shifted to the ongoing controversy surrounding government efficiency, a topic Crockett had been vocal about. She didn't hold back, blasting the current administration's advisory body led by a certain billionaire. "It's a circus, Jimmy. You've got people with no business in government playing puppet master, and it's the American people who suffer." Her words were sharp, deliberate, and the audience roared in approval. But Kimmel, perhaps sensing a chance to push buttons, interjected with a smirk. "Come on, Jasmine, you're acting like you've never played to a crowd. Isn't all this outrage just your brand now?" The jab landed like a slap, and the crowd's laughter felt uneasy. Crockett's posture stiffened, her eyes locking onto Kimmel's. "My brand? Jimmy, I'm out here fighting for people who don't have a voice, while you're cracking jokes for ratings. Don't get it twisted." The audience gasped, some cheering, others murmuring. Kimmel's smile faltered, but he doubled down, his voice taking on an edge. "Fighting? Sounds like you're just picking fights to stay relevant. That viral video of you dunking on your colleagues, how's that helping Texas?" The mention of her now infamous "Choose Your Fighter" TikTok clip, mocked by critics and late-night hosts alike, was a low blow, and Crockett's face tightened with fury. The tension was palpable now, the studio air heavy with unspoken challenges. Crockett leaned closer, her voice low but cutting. "You want to talk relevance, Jimmy? How about you stick to comedy and leave the real work to those of us who actually show up for it?" The crowd was on its feet, some cheering, others booing, as Kimmel's jaw clenched. He tried to pivot, tossing out a quip about her bold fashion choices, but it fell flat, the humor swallowed by the growing hostility. Crockett wasn't here to play along. She was here to fight. As the segment barreled toward its first break, the exchange grew sharper, each word a spark threatening to ignite a full-blown blaze. Kimmel, visibly rattled but unwilling to back down, leaned into his next question with a glint of malice. "You've been pretty loud about Trump lately, Jasmine. He called you low IQ at a dinner last month. Care to respond, or are you just gonna tweet about it later?" The audience held its breath, sensing the line had been crossed. Crockett's eyes blazed, her response hanging in the air like a storm about to break. What would she say to turn this showdown into something even more explosive? The studio lights burned hotter as Representative Jasmine Crockett's gaze bore into Jimmy Kimmel, her silence a coiled spring ready to snap. The audience, frozen, awaited her response to Kimmel's biting jab about Trump's low IQ insult. Last night's Jimmy Kimmel Live had already veered into chaos, and this moment felt like the edge of a cliff. Crockett's lips curled into a steely smile, her voice slicing through the tension. "Jimmy, if I'm low IQ, what's that make you for, thinking you can come for me and walk away clean?" The crowd erupted, a mix of cheers and gasps, as Kimmel's face twitched, caught off guard by the sheer audacity. Kimmel tried to recover, leaning back with a forced laugh. "Oh, I'm just asking the questions people want answered, Jasmine. You're the one turning this into a cage match." But his attempt to deflect only fueled Crockett's fire. She leaned forward, her words deliberate, each one landing like a hammer. "You don't get to play innocent, Jimmy. You brought up Trump to bait me, but let's talk real. He's out there calling people names while his policies tank the workings. Class, I'm fighting that. What are you fighting for? Better monologue jokes?" The audience roared, some clapping wildly, others shifting uncomfortably as the confrontation deepened. The exchange was no longer a talk show banter. It was a battlefield. Kimmel, his ego bruised, shot back, his voice sharper now. "Fighting? Jasmine, you're preaching to the choir here. But let's be honest, your grandstanding in Congress doesn't exactly scream bipartisan solutions. It's all performance, isn't it?" He gestured to the crowd, as if inviting them to agree. But the room was split, the energy chaotic. Crockett's eyes flashed with fury. "Performance? Jimmy, I'm representing people who can't afford to play games. You want to talk performance? Look at this set. Your whole show is a stage for you to feel important." The crowd gasped, the insult cutting deep, and Kimmel's smile vanished entirely. The conversation lurched into dangerous territory as Crockett pressed her attack, bringing up Kimmel's past controversies. "You've had your own missteps, Jimmy. Blackface skits? Yeah, I didn't forget. Maybe sit this one out before you lecture me on relevance." The audience's reaction was visceral. Some cheered Crockett's boldness, others booed her for digging up old wounds. Kimmel's face reddened, his voice tight with barely concealed anger. "That's low, Jasmine. You want to play dirty? I can keep up. Your district's got plenty of problems. Crime, poverty. Where's all that fire when it's time to deliver?" The personal jab hit hard, and Crockett's composure wavered for a split second before she fired back. "Don't you dare talk about my district like you know it. I'm in the trenches, Jimmy. You're in a penthouse." The studio was a powder keg, every word escalating the stakes. The producers, visible in the wings, exchanged frantic glances, unsure whether to cut to a break or let the chaos unfold. Kimmel, now fully abandoning his host persona, leaned in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Trenches? You're a politician, Jasmine, not a soldier. Save the hero act for your next campaign ad." Crockett's laugh was cold, cutting. "And save your tough guy act for someone who's scared of you, Jimmy. I'm not." The audience was on its feet, the noise deafening, as the two locked eyes, neither willing to yield. As the segment hurtled toward its close, the confrontation showed no signs of cooling. Crockett, sensing Kimmel's desperation to regain control, went for the jugular. "You want to keep coming for me? Fine. But let's see how you handle it when I start asking you some real questions." Kimmel's smirk faltered, his confidence shaken by the threat. What could she possibly say next to push this already explosive showdown into uncharted territory? The atmosphere in the Hollywood studio was electric, charged with the raw hostility between Jimmy Kimmel and Reprord Jasmine Crockett. Last night's Jimmy Kimmel Live had descended into a verbal brawl, and Crockett's latest threat hung heavy in the air. Her words, "Let's see how you handle it when I start asking you some real questions," had silenced the room, Kimmel's smirk crumbling under the weight of her challenge. The audience, caught in the crossfire, leaned forward, their murmurs a low hum of anticipation. What could Crockett possibly unleash to escalate this already volcanic clash? Crockett didn't hesitate, her voice steady but venomous. "Jimmy, you love grilling your guests, but how about we flip the script? Let's talk about your cozy friendships with some of the elites you pretend to mock." She paused, letting the accusation sink in. "You're quick to jab at politicians, but how often do you call out the Hollywood crowd you party with? The ones bankrolling the same systems you claim to hate?" The crowd gasped, the implication landing like a grenade. Kimmel's eyes widened, his composure cracking as he scrambled to respond. "That's rich, Jasmine. You're out here acting like you're above it all, but you're playing the same game. Photo ops, fundraisers, the whole deal." Crockett's laugh was sharp, cutting through his deflection. "Photo ops? Jimmy, I'm in D.C. fighting for families who can't pay their bills. You're at galas with millionaires. Don't lecture me about the game when you're sitting at the head of the table." The audience erupted, some cheering her audacity, others booing her for dragging Kimmel's personal life into the fray. Kimmel, his face flushed with anger, leaned forward, his voice low but seething. "You want to talk about fighting? Your district's a mess. Highest crime rates in Texas, schools failing. Where's all this energy when your people need it?" The personal attack was a gut punch, and Crockett's jaw tightened, her eyes blazing with fury. The confrontation was now a full-on war, each barb more vicious than the last. Crockett fired back, her voice rising with controlled rage. "You don't get to weaponize my district against me, Jimmy. I'm out here pushing for change while you're cracking jokes about it on TV. You want to talk impact? Name one thing you've done that's helped a single person in this country." The crowd's reaction was deafening, a chaotic mix of cheers and jeers, as Kimmel's hands gripped the desk, his knuckles white. "I raise millions for charities." "Jasmine," he snapped, "what's your excuse for Congress stalling on every major bill? All talk, no results." The accusation stung, and Crockett's response was immediate, her words dripping with disdain. "Charity? That's your shield now? You throw money at problems to feel good, but I'm in the trenches fixing them. Don't confuse your photo ops with my purpose." The studio was a tinderbox, the audience feeding off the escalating tension. Kimmel, desperate to regain the upper hand, took a risk, his tone mocking. "Purpose? Jasmine, your purpose seems to be going viral with sassy one-liners. That's not leadership, that's clout chasing." The crowd's reaction was split, some laughing nervously, others shouting in support of Crockett, who looked ready to combust. The producers, hovering in the shadows, were visibly panicked, their headsets buzzing with urgent chatter. This was no longer a talk show segment. It was a public execution. Crockett, undeterred, leaned closer, her voice a low, dangerous growl. "Clout? Jimmy, you built your career on snark and cheap shots. At least my fight's for something bigger than a laugh track." Kimmel's face contorted, his patience gone. "Bigger? All I see is a politician yelling to stay in the headlines. You're not saving the world. You're just loud." The audience held its breath, sensing the breaking point was near. Crockett's next move would either shatter Kimmel or push her own limits too far. What would she do to tip this explosive clash over the edge? The Hollywood studio pulsed with raw energy, the clash between Jimmy Kimmel and Rep. Jasmine Crockett reaching a fever pitch. Last night's Jimmy Kimmel Live was no longer a talk show. It was a verbal bloodbath. Crockett's scathing remark, "My fight's for something bigger than a laugh track," had stripped Kimmel bare, and his retort, dismissing her as just loud, only deepened the wound. The audience, breathless, watched as producers in the shadows scrambled, their headsets alive with panic. Crockett, her eyes blazing, was poised to push this explosive showdown past the point of no return. What could she say to break Kimmel entirely? She leaned forward, her voice a razor's edge. "Loud? Jimmy, my voice is the only thing some folks in my district have. You wouldn't know about that, cozying up with your A-list pals who never see struggle." The accusation, tying Kimmel to Hollywood's elite, was a gut punch. The crowd roared, some cheering her nerve, others stunned by the personal attack. Kimmel's face twisted, his voice shaking with rage. "Cozy? Jasmine, you're out here grandstanding on X. chasing clout like it's oxygen. Don't pretend you're some saint. You're just as much a performer as I am. The jab at her social media presence was sharp, but Crockett was unfazed, her smile icy. Performer? At least my stage is real, Jimmy, she shot back. I'm fighting for people who can't afford your ticket prices. You're up here mocking struggle while sipping champagne with moguls. The audience's reaction was chaotic. Some clapped wildly, others booed, as the insult cut deep into Kimmel's polished image. He slammed his hand on the desk, his voice rising. Mocking? I've raised millions for hospitals, Jasmine. What's your track record? Viral rants don't fix your district's crime rates. The personal dig was vicious, and Crockett's eyes narrowed, her composure tested but unbroken. The studio was a war zone, every word a missile. Crockett, seizing the moment, went for the jugular. Millions? That's your crutch, Jimmy. Throwing cash doesn't make you a hero, it just buys you applause. I'm out here changing laws, not egos. The crowd gasped, the audacity of her words splitting the room. Kimmel, his patience obliterated, snapped back with venom. Changing laws? Your party's been gridlocked for years. All you've changed is your follower count with those sassy clips. The audience's noise was deafening, a mix of cheers and jeers, as the two locked in a death stare, neither willing to blink. The producers, now visibly sweating, signaled frantically, but the segment was too far gone. Crockett, her voice low and lethal, pressed on. You want to talk followers? At least mine trust me to fight for them. Your fans just want a punchline. Who's really making a difference, Jimmy? The question was a dagger, and Kimmel's face reddened, his control slipping. Difference? You're a politician yelling into the void, Jasmine. This isn't Congress, it's my show, and you're out of your depth. The crowd's reaction was electric, some shouting support for Crockett, others rallying behind Kimmel, as the tension reached its zenith. The clash was now a public crucifixion, each side tearing into the other's core. Crockett, sensing Kimmel's desperation, leaned closer, her words dripping with defiance. Out of my depth? Jimmy, you're drowning in your own ego. Keep swinging, but you're not ready for what's coming. Kimmel's eyes widened, his confidence rattled by the cryptic threat. The audience held its breath, sensing the final blow was near. What would Crockett unleash to push this already apocalyptic showdown into its ultimate shattering climax? The Hollywood studio was a cauldron of chaos, the air crackling with the ferocity of Jimmy Kimmel and Reporter Jasmine Crockett's relentless battle. Last night's Jimmy Kimmel Live had become a cultural detonation, and Crockett's ominous warning, "You're not ready for what's coming," hung like a guillotine over Kimmel's head. The audience, gripped by the spectacle, was a sea of wide eyes and racing pulses. Producers, frozen in the wings, could only watch as the showdown hurtled toward its inevitable, earth-shaking end. Kimmel, his face a mask of fury and fear, tried to reclaim control, but Crockett was a force unbound, ready to deliver the final strike. Her voice was a low, searing blade. What's coming, Jimmy? The truth you can't laugh off. You sit here smug judging my fight, but you've never had to claw your way up like I have. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. I'm not just a guest you can mock. I'm the voice of people you'll never understand. The crowd erupted, some leaping to their feet, others stunned into silence by her raw conviction. Kimmel, his hands trembling, shot back, his voice hoarse with desperation. Voice? Jasmine, you're a politician, not a martyr. You're here for the spotlight, same as me. Stop pretending you're above it. The accusation was a last-ditch effort, but it only fueled Crockett's fire. She stood, her posture commanding, her eyes locking onto Kimmel's. Spotlight? I don't need your stage to shine, Jimmy. I'm here for my people, not your ratings. You crossed a line, dragging my work, my district, my life into your circus. The audience roared, the noise a tidal wave, as Crockett's words cut through Kimmel's defenses. He slammed his fist on the desk, his voice cracking. "Your people? You're using them as props for your brand. This isn't about Texas, it's about you staying relevant." The crowd's reaction was split, some booing Kimmel's cruelty, others cheering his defiance. But Crockett was unmoved, her gaze unyielding. The studio was a battlefield, the wreckage of their egos strewn across the stage. Crockett, her voice rising with righteous fury, delivered her coup de grace. "Relevant? Jimmy, I'm relevant because I fight for what's right, not because I beg for applause. You're the one chasing relevance, tearing me down to feel big. But I'm not your punching bag." The audience was on its feet, the applause thunderous, as Kimmel's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to retort, but Crockett cut him off, her tone final. "You wanted a show? You got one. But I'm done playing your game." With that, she ripped off her mic, the sound of it hitting the floor echoing like a gunshot. Kimmel, stunned, tried to salvage the moment, his voice weak. "Jasmine, come on, don't—" But she was already moving, her heels clicking as she stormed toward the exit. The crowd's cheers followed her, a chorus of support as Kimmel shouted, "After her, you can't just walk out." But Crockett didn't look back. She paused at the edge of the stage, turning just enough to deliver one last piercing look. "Watch me," she said, and with that, she was gone, the studio doors slamming behind her. The audience exploded, some chanting her name, others reeling from the seismic exit, as Kimmel sat frozen, his show in tatters. The producers scrambled to cut to a break, but the damage was done. The viral clip of Crockett's departure was already spreading like wildfire online, sparking a frenzy of reactions, some hailing her as a hero, others decrying her as disruptive. But in that moment, as the studio lights dimmed, one thing was clear. Jasmine Crockett had walked away triumphant, her defiance a blazing testament to her strength. Kimmel, left alone on his stage, could only stare at the empty chair, his empire shaken by a woman who refused to be silenced. The night was hers, and the world would not forget it.